Lena and Beesie were walking home from school. The sun was setting, and the streets were busy. Some people were going home, while others were setting up their stalls for the night. As they walked, Lena suddenly stopped. She saw a young beggar sitting against a wall. His clothes were torn, and he looked tired and hungry. But there was something different about him. He was young and had a kind face. Lena felt sorry for him. "Let's help him," she said, opening her bag to take out some money. Beesie frowned. "Lena, do you know how many beggars are out here? If you give money to all of them, you'll end up with nothing." "But he looks really hungry," Lena said softly. Beesie crossed her arms. "Do we even have extra money? Our rent is due soon." Lena paused. Beesie was right. The money she had was part of their rent. But she couldn't just walk away. Ignoring Beesie, Lena bent down and gave the beggar some money. "Hey, buy something to eat," she said kindly. The beggar looked up, surprised. "Thank you," he whispered, staring at the money like he couldn't believe it. Beesie shook her head. "You're too soft. Lena, people will take advantage of you." Lena smiled. "Let's go." As they walked, Beesie sighed loudly. "Now you don't have enough for rent, all because you wanted to help a stranger. What if he's just pretending?" Lena took a deep breath. "If he's pretending, that's his problem. But if he was really hungry, at least I helped." Beesie rolled her eyes. "You're too nice. That's why people will keep using you." Lena didn't answer. She knew Beesie was different. Beesie always acted like she was rich, but the truth was her family struggled just like Lena's. When they got home, Beesie turned to Lena angrily. "Give me your share of the rent." Lena looked down. "I don't have it right now. My parents will send money next month, and I'll pay you back." Beesie's eyes widened. "Are you serious? I'm always the one helping you, and now you give your money to a beggar? What if he was just lazy?" Lena stayed calm. "Not everyone is as lucky as us, Beesie." Beesie laughed bitterly. "Lucky? We can't even pay rent. Stop acting like a hero." Lena didn't argue. She just sat on their small bed, feeling hurt but not regretting her choice. Beesie grabbed a towel and stormed off. "This is the last time I help you." Lena sighed. She knew things would be hard, but she still believed she did the right thing. The next morning, Lena woke up early. She still felt bad about her fight with Beesie, but she didn't want to dwell on it. After getting ready for school, she packed some food, just a little rice and beans left from their small kitchen. As she walked to school, she kept glancing around until she reached the same street corner where she had seen the beggar the day before. Her heart warmed when she spotted him still sitting there. The moment the young man saw her, his eyes lit up. He sat up quickly, surprised. "You came back?" he asked. Lena smiled and handed him the food. "Yes, I brought you something to eat." The beggar's hand shook slightly as he took it. "Thank you so much," he said, his voice full of gratitude. "You don't know what this means to me." Lena sat on a nearby rock, watching him eat slowly, as if he didn't want the food to finish too fast. She could tell he hadn't eaten properly in a long time. After a few minutes, the young man wiped his mouth and smiled at her. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I'm an orphan." Lena's heart ached. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. That must be really hard." He nodded. "It is. I lost my parents when I was little. I grew up in an orphanage, but when I turned 18, I had to leave. Since then, life has been tough. I've tried to find work, but no one hires someone like me. So I ended up here." Lena's eyes softened. "That's really sad. I wish I could do more to help you." Daniel smiled. "You've already done a lot. Yesterday, you gave me money. Today, you brought me food. You're the first person in a long time who's treated me like a human being." Lena looked down, feeling shy. "I don't have much, Daniel, but I can bring you food whenever I can." Daniel's eyes filled with gratitude. "That's more than enough. Thank you, Lena." She smiled and stood up. "I have to go now, or I'll be late for school." Daniel nodded. "Be careful on your way." As Lena walked away, she felt something strange in her heart. She didn't know why, but she felt connected to Daniel in a way she couldn't explain. One evening, Beesie stormed into their small apartment, her face twisted in frustration. She threw a bag on the table and yanked open the kitchen cupboard. When she saw most of their food was gone, she slammed the door shut and turned to Lena. "What's going on? Why is our food finishing so fast these days?" she snapped. Lena, sitting on the bed, looked up calmly. "We ate it, BC. That's why it's finished." BC folded her arms. "We?" "Lena, I barely stay at home. I go out every day and only eat a little. How has everything gone so quickly?" Lena stayed quiet. She knew where this was going. BC stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Lena, I hope you're not taking our food and giving it to your poor beggar friend." Lena's face hardened. She stood up, glaring at BC. "Be respectful. Don't talk about my friend like that." BC burst into laughter. "Friend? A dirty beggar is now your friend? Lena, are you hearing yourself?" She shook her head. "I think you're losing your mind. You need help." Lena took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Daniel is a human being, just like us. If life had been kinder to him, maybe he'd be in school like we are. Stop looking down on people. BC rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. That boy is lazy. He should go find work instead of sitting on the street, waiting for girls like you to pity him." Lena ignored her and sat back down. But BC wasn't done. She sat beside Lena and lowered her voice. "Since you have no money," BC said, "there's something we can do." Lena looked at her suspiciously. "What is it?" BC smirked. "Let's go see Chief. He likes young girls like us. If we go to him, he'll give us anything we want. Money, food, clothes, as long as we do whatever he says." Lena's eyes widened in shock. I will never be part of your dirty business. Never." BC scoffed. "Dirty business? Lena, you're suffering. You can't pay rent. You don't have food, and now you're crying over Beggar. Wise up. Chief will take care of us." Lena shook her head firmly. "I'm from a Christian home. I'll keep myself and my future husband." BC laughed loudly. "Oh, please, Lena, open your eyes. Girls are making money every day, and here you are suffering because of useless pride." Lena said nothing. BC smirked. "You're missing out, my dear. But don't worry, I'll enjoy it for both of us." She stood up, grabbed her phone, and started typing, probably messaging Chief. Lena sat there, her heart heavy. She knew BC had changed, but she didn't expect her to go this far. Silently, she prayed for strength. The next day, the sun was bright, and the air was warm as Lena walked back to the street corner where Daniel always sat today. She carried a small bag of food, what little she had saved, even though she knew BC would be furious if she found out. When she arrived, Daniel was sitting in his usual spot, deep in thought. The moment he saw her, his face lit up. "You came back," he said, sitting up straight. Lena smiled and handed him the food. "Of course. I told you I'd bring you food whenever I can." Daniel took it eagerly but gently, as if it was something precious. "You don't know how much this means to me, Lena. Thank you." Lena sat beside him on a small rock and watched as he ate. After a while, she spoke. "Daniel, there's something I've been wondering about," she said. Daniel looked at her curiously. "What is it?" "You said you never went to school, right?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yes." "Then how come you speak so well?" Lena asked. "You sound like someone who's been educated." Daniel smiled. "I just listen to people when they talk. I pick up words from passers-by and learn how they speak. I'm a fast learner." Lena was impressed. "Wow, that's amazing. Not many people can do that." Daniel chuckled. "Well, when life forces you to survive, you learn quickly." Lena studied him closely. She had never met a beggar like him before. He was different, confident in the way he spoke, and his eyes held a kind of intelligence that made her curious. "Where do you live?" she asked suddenly. Daniel swallowed the last bite and wiped his mouth. "I stay in an unfinished building," he said simply. Lena gasped. "What? That's dangerous." Daniel laughed. "Dangerous? Don't worry about me. Lena, I'm a fighter, a warrior. No one can harm me." Lena couldn't help but laugh too. "A warrior, you say? And what battles have you fought?" she teased. Daniel grinned. Plenty. I fight hunger every day. I fight the cold at night. I fight people who try to steal from me. And guess what? I always win. Lena shook her head, smiling. You're funny, Daniel. Daniel shrugged playfully. You have to be strong in this life. If not, people will walk all over you. Lena sighed. I wish I could help you more. Daniel reached out and gently tapped her shoulder. You're already helping me. Lena, every time you bring me food, you give me hope. That's more than enough. Lena felt warmth in her heart. She didn't know why, but being around Daniel made her feel something she couldn't explain. He was poor, homeless, and struggling, but he had a strength that even rich people didn't have. At school, Bisa sat under a shady tree with two girls, enjoying their attention. She loved moments like this, when she could pretend to be more important than she really was. You girls don't understand, Bisa said with a proud smile. I chose to be in this school. My parents wanted me to go to a private university abroad, but I refused. One of the girls gasped. You refuse? Why would you do that? Bisa sighed, acting like it was nothing. I just wanted to experience life here. I wanted to be independent. My parents weren't happy, but in the end, they let me stay. The second girl shook her head in amazement. Wow, that must have been a big decision. Bisa smiled. Of course, but don't think they abandoned me. They still take care of me. They send me money every week. I never lack anything. The two girls looked at each other with envy. You're so lucky. If my parents were rich, I would never have refused to study abroad. Bisa laughed. Well, I like it here. And honestly, money is not a problem for me. One of the girls sighed. I wish I had your life. Everything must be so easy for you. Bisa smiled. She loved hearing those words. That's why I'm taking you girls out this weekend. My treat. The girls' faces brightened. Are you serious? One asked in shock. Of course. Bisa said, what's the point of having money if I can't enjoy it? We'll go to the best restaurant, eat anything we want, and have a good time. The girls could hardly contain their excitement. Bisa, you're the best. Bisa laughed. She loved the attention, the admiration, and the way people wished they were her. 2 days later, Lena couldn't keep her thought to herself anymore. She had been thinking about Daniel every day, worrying about his safety. The unfinished building where he slept wasn't safe. It was open to danger, especially at night. She told Bisa that she didn't like where Daniel was staying and that she wanted him to stay with them for a while until she found a better solution. Bisa immediately said no. Lena, this is none of your business. Bisa snapped. Are you in love with that poor beggar? You should be focusing on school, not wasting time on him. Lena frowned. Bisa, stop talking like that. Daniel is a person, just like us. Bisa rolled her eyes. You're acting like a fool. Your parents sent you to school so you could get a good job and help them. Instead, you're busy thinking about a beggar. Lena clenched her fists. I won't let you talk about him like that. Bisa scoffed. Chief and his friends are willing to give us money, but you refuse. You'd rather suffer. Lena glared at her. I will never do what you're doing, Bisa. And if I care about Daniel, that's my choice. Bisa crossed her arms. Fine, but don't expect me to live in the same house with a beggar. Lena had already made up her mind. She was going to help Daniel, no matter what Bisa thought. A few days later, Daniel was in the hospital. Some men had attacked him, trying to steal the little money he had begged for that day. They beat him badly and left him on the ground. A kind stranger found him and took him to the hospital. When Lena heard, she rushed to see him. Her heart pounded as she entered the hospital room. Daniel lay on the bed, weak and bruised. His arm was bandaged. Doctor, how is he? Will he be okay? Lena asked quickly. The doctor smiled. Don't worry, he'll be fine. Just minor injuries. But young lady, this young man needs a safer place to stay. The streets are dangerous. If he keeps living like this, things like this will keep happening. Lena turned to Daniel. You heard that. You can't go back there. Daniel sighed. I know, Lena, but where else can I go? I have nowhere. Lena took a deep breath. Come home with me. Daniel shook his head. No, Lena, BC will never allow it. And your room is already small. I don't want to cause trouble. Lena was firm. Forget BC. This is my decision. We'll manage. I can't leave you out there again. What if next time it's worse? Daniel looked at her, unsure. Lena, you don't have to do this for me. You've already done enough. Lena shook her head. I've made up my mind. You're coming home with me. That's final. After a moment, Daniel sighed. Okay, Lena, if you insist, I'll come. Lena smiled in relief. Good. Let's go home. That evening, Lena and Daniel arrived at the small apartment. The streets were quiet as they stepped inside. At least now, Daniel had a roof over his head. Just as they settled in, Lena's phone rang. It was BC. She hesitated before answering. Hello, BC. BC's excited voice came through. Lena, I just wanted to let you know. I traveled. I'll be back in 5 days. Lena was surprised. You traveled? To where? BC laughed. You know me, my dear. I have places to be and people to see. Don't miss me too much. Lena rolled her eyes. Okay, safe journey. BC didn't ask about the house or if Lena was okay. She just ended the call, saying she'd see her in 5 days. Lena put her phone down and turned to Daniel. That was BC. She traveled. She won't be back for 5 days. Daniel nodded. That's good. At least I won't have to deal with her insults for now. Lena smiled. Exactly. For the next 5 days, you can have some peace. Daniel sighed in relief. Thank you, Lena. I don't know how to repay you. Lena shook her head. You don't have to repay me. Just focus on getting better. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt safe. The next day, Lena came home looking sad. She dropped her bag and sat quietly, staring at the floor. Her mind was troubled. Daniel noticed immediately. Lena, what's wrong? She sighed. It's my school fees. I haven't paid it. Daniel looked concerned. Why? I thought your parents always send you money. Lena nodded slowly. They do, but this time they couldn't. Their farming business failed. They barely have enough to eat, so they don't have money to send me right now. Daniel's face softened. I'm really sorry, Lena. That must be hard for you. Lena shook her head. It's not their fault. They've done their best for me. I just don't know what to do now. Daniel smiled and raised his hand like he was holding an invisible staff. I, Pastor Daniel, by the power invested in me, decree that you shall get a helper very soon. Lena burst into laughter. Oh, really? So now you're a pastor? Daniel grinned. Yes, you can call me Pastor Daniel the Great, man of faith. Lena laughed again. I wish it was that easy. Daniel nodded seriously. God works in mysterious ways. Lena, just wait and see. Lena sighed. I really hope so. The next day, Lena went to school, still worried about her fees. She planned to ask for more time to pay. But when she got to the finance office, something unexpected happened. The staff looked at her and smiled. Lena, you don't need to worry about your school fees. She was confused. What do you mean? They checked their records. Your fees have already been paid. Lena's eyes widened. Paid? By who? The staff shook their heads. We don't know, but everything is settled. You owe nothing. Lena stood there, speechless. She felt like she was dreaming. Someone had paid her fees, and she had no idea who. Without wasting time, she ran home, her heart racing. The moment she entered the house, she shouted, Daniel, my school fees have been paid. Daniel smiled calmly. I told you, Lena, God works in mysterious ways. Lena sat down, still in shock. I don't understand. I don't even know who did it. Daniel folded his arms. Do you still doubt Pastor Daniel? Lena laughed. Okay, you win. Indeed, you are a true man of God. Daniel grinned. I told you, when Pastor Daniel speaks, things happen. They both laughed, but deep inside, Lena couldn't stop thinking about it. who had paid her fees. 5 days later, Bisi returned home. It was early afternoon, and Lena had already gone to school. Bisi unlocked the door and stepped inside, expecting to find the house just as she had left it. But the moment she walked in, she saw something she never expected. Daniel was sitting quietly in a corner, reading an old book. Bisi froze, staring at him in shock. Then her face twisted with anger. "What are you doing here?" she asked sharply. Daniel looked up and stood. "Good afternoon, Bisi." "Don't good afternoon me," she snapped. "What are you doing in my house?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Lena brought me here. I was attacked a few days ago, and the doctor said I needed a safer place to stay. Lena said I could stay here for a while, until she found a solution for me." Bisi's expression turned to pure disgust. She looked around the room like something smelled bad, then covered her nose dramatically. "So Lena really brought a street beggar into my house," she said. "I can't believe this nonsense." Daniel stayed calm. "I know you don't like me, Bisi, but I didn't force Lena to do anything. She only wanted to help." Bisi scoffed. "Help? Is she planning to turn this house into a charity home? First, she wastes her time giving you food, and now she brings you into my space." She pulled out her phone and dialed Lena's number. The moment Lena picked up, Bisi shouted, "Lena, come home right now." Lena, who was still in school, was surprised. "Bisi, what's wrong?" "What's wrong? I just walked into my house and saw that disgusting beggar sitting here like he belongs." Bisi snapped. "Lena, you have 5 minutes to get here and take him out before I do it myself." Lena's heart raced. She knew this would happen, but she had hoped to explain to Bisi properly. "I'm on my way," Lena said quickly and ended the call. She grabbed a bag and rushed out of the lecture hall, ignoring the curious stares of her classmates. As she hurried home, she could already imagine the storm waiting for her. Lena rushed home, her heart pounding. She knew Bisi was angry, but she had to try and calm her down. The moment she opened the door, Bisi turned to her sharply. "Lena, what is wrong with you? How could you bring this beggar into our house without telling me?" Lena took a deep breath. "Bisi, please listen to me." Bisi folded her arms. "Listen to what? That you turned our home into a charity center? Do you know how embarrassing this is?" Lena stepped closer. "Bisi, I understand why you're upset. But please, just think about it. Daniel has nowhere to go. He was attacked before. If I send him back out there, what if something worse happens? I know you have a strong heart, but deep down, I also know you won't be happy with yourself if he leaves here and something terrible happens to him." Bisi sighed loudly. "Lena, I don't have time for all this emotional talk. I don't care about him. This is not our problem." Lena continued, "But Bisi, what if it was you? What if you lost everything and had nowhere to go? Wouldn't you want someone to show you kindness?" Bisi looked away for a moment. She didn't want to admit it, but Lena's words touched something deep inside her. Bisi was silent for a moment. She looked at Daniel, who was still sitting quietly, avoiding eye contact. She sighed heavily. "It's just because of God," she finally said. Lena's heart lifted with hope. "Thank you, Bisi. Thank you so much." Bisi raised a finger. "Wait, don't celebrate yet. I give him just 1 week. He must find somewhere else to stay before then. If not, I will personally throw him back into the street." Lena nodded quickly. "I understand. 1 week is enough. Thank you, Bisi." Bisi clicked her tongue and picked up a phone, ignoring them both. Lena turned to Daniel. "You see? Everything is fine now." Daniel gave her a small smile. "Thank you, Lena. I owe you everything." Lena smiled back, but deep down, she knew this 1 week was not going to be easy. A few days later, Lena got terrible news. Her father was very sick, and she needed to go back to her village immediately. She packed a small bag and prepared for the journey. She sat Daniel down and explained the situation. "I'll be back in 2 or 3 days," she promised. Daniel's heart sank. "Lena, how will I handle Bisi alone while you're gone?" Lena sighed. "I know it won't be easy, but just stay out of her way. I'll be back soon." Daniel didn't like the idea of being alone with Bisi, but he understood Lena had no choice. He wished he could go with her, but she refused. "Daniel, I'll be fine. My father needs me right now," Lena said. Finally, Daniel agreed. He walked with her to the bus station, carrying her small bag. Before she boarded, he looked at her one last time. "Be careful, Lena," he said. "I will," she replied. "Take care of yourself." Daniel watched as the bus drove away. He felt uneasy but had no choice but to return home. When Daniel got back, he was surprised to find Beesie waiting for him with a strange smile. She leaned against the door, watching him closely. For a moment, Daniel was confused. This wasn't the Beesie he knew. "You know, Daniel," Beesie said, her voice unusually sweet, "I never knew you were this handsome." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" Beesie stepped closer. "Lena has really done a good job on you. You don't look like the dirty beggar she picked from the street anymore." She paused, then smiled. "But I can do much better." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Beesie tossed her hair. "I'm more classy and wealthy, unlike your Lena, who is from a poor background. She has nothing, but I can change your life." Daniel's face darkened. "Beesie, what are you trying to say?" Beesie laughed softly. "Come to me, Daniel. Let's have fun. Let me show you what real enjoyment looks like." Daniel's expression turned to disgust. "Never, Beesie, the same person who sleeps with all the rich men in town? You think I haven't heard the stories about you?" Beesie's smile disappeared. Daniel continued, "You'll do anything for money, and you stand here talking about wealth? I also know your parents are poor and struggling in the village. Stop living a fake life. Beesie." Beesie's face twisted in anger. "How dare you talk to me like that? I was trying to help your miserable life. I was even ready to take care of you, but you're too dirty and ugly for me anyway." Daniel chuckled. "I'm ugly, yet you're here begging me to have fun with you." Beesie's eyes burned with rage. "I know that foolish Lena told you all these things about me. I'll deal with her when she returns." Daniel shook his head. "She never told me anything. The wolves have ears. Beesie, change your ways before you get a bad sickness one day." Beesie clenched her fists. "Enough. I've had enough of you. Get out of my house this minute." Daniel grabbed his small bag and slung it over his shoulder. "I don't care. I was leaving anyway." Without another word, he walked out, leaving Beesie standing there, breathing heavily in anger. She had lost control, and that made her furious. That night, as Lena sat outside her family's small village house, enjoying the cool evening air, her phone rang. She checked the screen and saw Daniel's name. She answered immediately. "Daniel, how are you? How is everything?" Daniel sighed. "Lena, I need to tell you something." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Daniel wasted no time. He told her everything, how Beesie had smiled at him strangely, called him handsome, and tried to convince him to be with her instead of Lena. He repeated every word, including how Beesie insulted Lena, saying she was from a poor background and not good enough for him. By the time he finished, Lena was furious. "That shameless girl. After all the things she said about you, she had the guts to try and get you for herself." Daniel sighed. "She thought I'd fall for her because she claims to be rich and classy. But when I refused, she insulted me and told me to leave." Lena shook her head. "That girl has no shame. But I'm not surprised. I knew she was capable of anything." Daniel hesitated before asking, "Lena, how is your father? Have you seen him?" Lena sighed. "That's what I wanted to tell you. My father was never sick." Daniel was confused. "What?" Lena sighed again. "My parents just missed me. They wanted me to come home and see them, so they made up the story to make sure I traveled." Daniel chuckled. "Wow, so you came all the way for nothing." "Not for nothing," Lena said. "I got to spend time with them, and they are happy to see me. But I'll be coming back tomorrow. I can't stay here when Beesie is trying to turn my life upside down." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Daniel said. "You know she'll throw you out the moment you return." Lena scoffed. "Let her try. She can't scare me." "I know you're strong, Lena," Daniel said. "But listen, I found a job." Lena's mood changed instantly. "What?" "Daniel, You found a job?" "Yes," Daniel said proudly. "I'm now working as a security guard for an old couple. They are kind people, and they even gave me the small room at the back of their house to stay in." Lena's face lit up with joy. "Daniel, this is amazing news. Finally, you have a job." "Wait, there's more," Daniel said, sounding excited. "Guess what?" "What?" Lena asked eagerly. "I told them about you. I explained my situation and everything you've done for me. And guess what? They agreed that you can come and stay with me." Lena gasped. "Are you serious?" "Yes. They said you seem like a good person, and they are willing to let you stay. So when you come back, you don't have to worry about BC throwing you out." Lena felt tears of joy in her eyes. "Daniel, this is the best news I've heard in a long time. I can't wait to come back so we can celebrate." Daniel laughed. "You better come quickly before BC burns all your clothes in anger." Lena laughed too, feeling happier than she had in days. She had left the city with nothing but worries, but now she was returning with a fresh start. Lena arrived home early the next afternoon, her heart pounding. She had made up her mind. She was leaving Beese's house for good. There was no need for arguments or explanations. Beese had shown her true colors, and Lena wasn't going to beg to stay where she wasn't wanted. The apartment was quiet when she entered. Beese wasn't around, which was a relief. Without wasting time, Lena quickly gathered her few belongings, folding her clothes neatly into her small travel bag. She took a deep breath, looked around the room one last time, and then quietly walked out, shutting the door behind her. She knew Beese would be furious when she found out, but Lena didn't care anymore. Her life was moving forward, and Beese was now part of her past. When Lena arrived at Daniel's new workplace, she stopped in shock. The house in front of her wasn't just big, it was a mansion. The tall gates, the beautifully designed compound, and the expensive cars parked outside all screamed wealth and power. She turned to Daniel in disbelief. "Daniel, this is where you work?" she asked, still trying to process everything. Daniel smiled. "Yes, Lena." Lena shook her head. "How did this happen? Just a few days ago, you were struggling to find a place to sleep, and now you're working in a place like this." Daniel chuckled. "Let me tell you what happened." He took a deep breath and explained. "The day Beese chased me out, I was walking on the road with nowhere to go. I was tired, hungry, and frustrated. I sat in a corner, crying, not knowing what to do. Then a car stopped in front of me. A man stepped out and asked me why I was crying." Lena listened carefully. Daniel continued, "I told him everything. How I lost my parents, how I'd been struggling on the streets, how you took me in, and how Beese eventually threw me out. The man listened patiently, and then asked me a simple question. 'Do you want to work?' Daniel smiled as he remembered. I said yes immediately. And just like that, he offered me a job as a security guard. He brought me here, introduced me to his wife, and told me I could stay in the small house at the back." Lena's eyes widened. "Wow! They are so kind. God bless them." Daniel nodded. "Yes, they're really good people." Lena smiled. "I need to thank them personally." Daniel nodded. "Go ahead. The main house is just inside. They are Chief Okafor and his wife. They are very nice." Lena straightened her dress and made her way to the main house. When she entered the large, elegant home, she was warmly welcomed by Chief Okafor and his wife, Madame Grace. She smiled respectfully and said, "Good afternoon, sir, Ma. I just came to say thank you for all you've done for Daniel. He's been through a lot, and I truly appreciate your kindness." Chief Okafor and his wife looked at each other, surprised by Lena's humility. Madame Grace smiled warmly. "You're such a well-mannered young lady. No wonder Daniel speaks so highly of you." Chief Okafor nodded. "Yes, he told us everything. How you helped him when he had nothing. How you risked your own comfort just to make sure he was safe. It's rare to find someone with such a pure heart these days." Lena felt shy. "I only did what was right, so..." Madame Grace suddenly looked at her husband and smiled before turning back to Lena. "Since Daniel said you two are just friends, we have something to ask you." Lena looked at them curiously. "What is it, Mao?" Chief Okafor cleared his throat. "We have a son who lives abroad. We've been searching for a good, kind, and respectful woman for him. Someone who will love him not for his money but for who he is. From everything we've seen and heard about you, we think you're the perfect match for him." Lena's heart nearly stopped. "Excuse me." Madame Gray smiled. "Yes, dear. We want you to consider marrying our son. He is hard-working and responsible, but has been so focused on his career that he hasn't settled down. We believe you would make the perfect wife for him." Lena was speechless. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "With all due respect, Ma," Lena finally said, "I'm not interested. I have someone." Chief Okafor and Madame Grace exchanged glances before Madame Gray said, "It's okay, dear. We understand. We won't force you, but we'll give you time to think about it." Lena nodded. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate the offer, but I already know where my heart belongs." They smiled at her and wished her well as she left. When Lena returned, she wasn't happy with Daniel. She looked at him with a serious face. "Daniel, why did you tell Chief Okafor and his wife that we're just friends and nothing more?" she asked. Daniel scratched his head, looking guilty. "I'm sorry, Lena. I thought if I said anything else, they wouldn't let you stay here." Lena sighed. "Well, because of that, they now want me to marry their son." Daniel's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "Yes," Lena continued. "They said I'm kind and respectful, and they need a good woman like me for their son who lives abroad." Daniel swallowed hard. "And what did you say?" Lena looked at him with a playful smile. "I told them I'm not interested because I already have someone." Daniel's heart pounded. "Who?" Lena folded her arms. "You tell me." Daniel took a deep breath and stepped closer. "Lena, listen to me. I need to tell you something." She raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Daniel looked into her eyes. "I love you, Lena. I've loved you from the first day you gave me food on the street. You're the mother of my unborn children. I don't want anyone else." Lena's serious face slowly changed. A small smile appeared on her lips. "If that's how you feel," she said, "then you should go and tell Chief Okafor and his wife." Daniel shook his head. "It's not necessary. The only person I need to tell is you." Lena smiled wider. "So what now?" Daniel grinned. "Now we build our future together, just you and me." Lena nodded. "That sounds perfect." Weeks passed, and Lena noticed something strange. Beesie, who used to be full of energy, started looking sick. At first, Lena thought maybe she was just tired or had a small illness. But as days went by, Beesie got worse. She became weak, had fevers often, and stopped eating well. One afternoon, Beesie finally went to the hospital. After many tests, the doctor sat her down with a serious face. "Miss Beesie," the doctor said gently, "your test results are back. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have HIV." Beesie felt like the world stopped. Her whole body went cold. "No, that's not possible," she whispered. The doctor sighed. "I know this is hard to hear, but we need to start treatment right away. Right now, your chances are 50-50ths. Beesie's hand shook. "What do you mean 50-50ths? "Your immune system is weak," the doctor explained. "If you had come earlier, it would have been better. With treatment, you can still live long, but we must act fast." Tears rolled down Beesie's face. She thought about all the men she had been with, all the time she ignored Lena's warnings. Regret hit her like a heavy stone. She left the hospital in shock, her whole world crashing down. Months later, Beesie's condition got worse. Her once beautiful skin became pale. She lost so much weight that people barely recognized her. She could no longer hide the truth. One evening, she had a terrible pain and was rushed to the hospital. She cried and struggled to breathe. The doctors tried everything, but she was very sick. In her weakest moment, Beesie turned to her mother, her voice barely a whisper. "Mama, please call Lena," she begged, breathing heavily. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Lena." Beesie nodded weakly. "Please, I need to see her." Her mother hesitated, then picked up a phone and called Lena. Lena was at Daniel's small house, helping him clean, when her phone rang. She wiped her hands and answered. "Hello." Lena, it's me, Beese's mother, the shaky voice said. Lena's heart skipped. Mama Beesy, what's wrong? It's Beesy. She's in the hospital. Please come quickly. Lena's breath caught. Hospital? What happened? She's been sick for months. She didn't tell you. Please come. Her mother begged. She keeps asking for you. Lena didn't waste a second. She grabbed her bag and ran out. Daniel tried to stop her, asking what was wrong, but she was too shaken to explain. She took the first taxi to the hospital, her hands trembling the whole way. When Lena arrived at the hospital, she rushed into the ward. What she saw broke her heart. Beesy lay on the bed, but she looked nothing like before. Her skin was pale, her bones visible under her thin frame. Tubes were connected to her arms, and her breathing was slow and painful. Lena covered her mouth, tears falling. She moved closer and held Beesy's weak hand. Beesy. Her voice cracked. Oh my God, look at you. Beesy slowly opened her eyes. When she saw Lena, a single tear fell. Lena, you came, she whispered. Lena wiped her tears. Of course I came. Beesy, what happened to you? Beesy sobbed weakly. I should have listened to you. I should have listened. Lena shook her head, her chest tight. I warned you, Beesy. I told you to stop sleeping with all those men. But you didn't listen. Now look where you are. Beesy cried harder. I was foolish, Lena. I thought money and pleasure were everything. But now, I have nothing left. Lena squeezed her hand. I wish I could do something to help you. Beesy looked into Lena's eyes, her own filled with regret. Pray for me, Lena. Pray that God forgives me. Lena nodded, tears streaming down her face. I will, Beesy. I will. Beesy's mother stood in the corner, crying silently. She looked at Lena with deep pain. She always spoke about you, Lena. Even when she was sick, she regrets everything. Lena bowed her head, still holding Beesy's hand. She closed her eyes and prayed, her voice filled with emotion. Beesy closed her eyes too, tears rolling down her cheeks. She had made so many mistakes, but now all she wanted was one last chance. Lena returned home after the emotional visit, her heart heavy. She wanted to talk to Daniel, to tell him about Beesy. But when she entered his small house, he wasn't there. Daniel, she called out. No answer. She quickly called his phone. Daniel, where are you? I just got home, and I can't find you. I'm in the main house, Daniel said. Lena frowned. The main house? What are you doing there? Daniel chuckled. Just come. You need to see this yourself. Confused, Lena hurried to the mansion. When she stepped inside, her heart nearly stopped. Standing in the living room was Daniel, but not the Daniel she knew. He wore an expensive suit, looking clean, sharp, and completely different. His usual simple look was gone, replaced by the image of a wealthy, confident man. Lena's mouth fell open. Daniel, what is this? Daniel smiled. Surprised. Lena stepped closer, still in shock. Daniel, what's going on? Why are you dressed like this? Daniel took a deep breath. Lena, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Lena's heart raced. What is it? Daniel looked at her seriously. I was never poor or homeless. Lena. Lena froze. What? Daniel nodded. I faked everything. Lena shook her head, trying to understand. Why would you do that? Daniel sighed. Because after so many rejections and heartbreaks, I wanted to find someone who would love me for me, not for my money. Lena felt like the room was spinning. So all this time, you were pretending. Daniel nodded again. Yes, Lena, I was testing people. I wanted to see if true love still existed, if there was someone who could care for a man with nothing. And then I met you. Lena's emotions were all over the place. So you lied to me. Daniel looked deep into her eyes. Lena, I never lied about my feelings. Everything I felt for you was real. But there's more. Lena swallowed. What more could there be? Daniel hesitated, then said, Chief Okafor and Madam Grace are my biological parents. Lena took a step back. What? That's not possible. Daniel nodded. It's true. They planned everything with me. They wanted to find a good woman for me, someone with a kind heart, someone who would love me without knowing I was rich. That's why they let you stay here. Lena's chest tightened. So even the offer to marry their son, that was all a setup. Daniel nodded. Yes, because I am their son. Lena felt shock, betrayal, confusion, and disbelief. Daniel, you should not have gone that far. Daniel stepped closer. Lena, I know it was risky, but if I hadn't done this, I would never have found you. You are the most selfless, kind, and loving person I've ever met. You didn't help me because you thought I could give you anything. You helped me because you have a good heart. Lena stared at him, tears filling her eyes. Daniel, this is too much for me to process. Daniel gently took her hands. I know, and I'm sorry for everything, but I need you to know something. Lena looked up at him. Daniel got down on one knee. Lena gasped as he pulled out a small, beautiful ring. Lena, he said softly, from the moment I met you, I knew you were different. You cared for me when I had nothing. You stood by me when no one else did. You are the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. Will you marry me? Tears rolled down Lena's cheeks. She had dreamed of love but never expected this. Everything she thought she knew had changed, but one thing remained the same, her love for Daniel. She smiled through her tears. Yes, Daniel, I will marry you. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, and applause filled the room as Chief Okafor and Madame Grace walked in, smiling proudly. Madame Grace hugged Lena. Welcome to the family, my dear. Chief Okafor patted Daniel on the back. You've made the right choice, son. Lena wiped her tears. I can't believe this is real. Daniel smiled. Believe it, my love. This is just the beginning. Months later, Lena and Daniel had a grand wedding. It was a day filled with love, laughter, and joy. People who once looked down on Lena now admired her. She had found love in the most unexpected way. As she stood beside Daniel, looking into his eyes, she knew she had made the best decision of her life. Because in the end, love was never about money, status, or appearances. It was about the heart, and Daniel had found the one who truly loved his.